Hey guys, Soph here. I'm gonna do a little video that was kind of highly requested, and it was like a video for people who are maybe thinking of picking up a new healer for Shadowlands, or people who are, you know, maybe have an ult that they're, gear like leveling and gearing to play DPS, and then they thought maybe I'll play like a healer off spec. So people have been kind of asking me like, oh, what would you recommend for someone who's new to healing, or what would you recommend for someone who's enjoys doing DPS but wants to heal. So I'm gonna do a video which is just gonna be a quick summary about what I think of each of the healers that maybe could be used for someone who's kind of conflicted and maybe thinking like, oh, I don't know what's really fun to play. But I want to start this off by saying there are two kind of different types of healers. I call them healers, and then there's your damage healers. Now it doesn't matter which way you play. To be honest, the only time your damage as a healer is going to matter is when you're pushing the higher keys. But a lot of the healers that I know are interested in doing as much damage as they can while also doing enough healing to, keep their group alive. And I'm definitely one of those people. When I look at a healer, I look at how much damage it can do and can I make it do more damage. And that's the main reason I started playing Holy Priest. Is during PFA people said, oh, Holy Priest doesn't do any damage. And I kind of was like, well, I'm going to prove you wrong. And so I spent like the whole of, pre-patch and like season 4 trying to prove to people that Holy Priest actually does do damage. So yeah, I'm just going to, I don't know, break it down, probably only spend 5 minutes per each, because I'm not going to try and tell you what's good and bad, for what content. I'm just going to tell you from a perspective of someone who does play all of these healers at, a decently competitive level, what I think is enjoyable about them and what you might be interested in knowing, from an outside perspective. So we're going to start with Holy Priest. The thing I enjoy the most about Holy Priest is it's kind of a healer. It fits really well into that bracket of the two healers. It does a lot of healing. It has a lot of healing spells. Sorry, I'm like tapping on my hand, but it has so many different AoE healing spells. It has so many different single target healing spells. It has a great damage rotation now with the new the new rotation for Shadowlands. You have a little bit of extra buttons that you can press to do more damage. And that's what I also really like. It just needed that little bit more, oomph to help it do a little bit more damage. So now I've been enjoying it because it doesn't feel quite as weak in terms of your damage that you're going to be doing in a key, because in the end of like season 4 I was making it do damage, but then again it was still significantly lower than the other healers. But now with the new spells you can actually put out quite a lot of damage, and you can also do incredibly good AoE healing. So maybe if you're thinking of plugging keys, or maybe you're just a type of healer who's like a healer type, Holy Priest is kind of perfect for you because you have so many healing spells. You've got great movement. I love playing a priest. Your damage rotation is incredibly fun. Guardian Angel is a nice spell. I think it's actually called Guardian Spirit, sorry. So, if you're interested in a healer that does good healing, has a fun rotation, and a lot of people tend to gravitate towards priests. I'm not sure what it is. I think it's maybe because they're popular. They're not generally good in raid. They're generally somewhat good in M+. And Holy's definitely looking like it's going to be much better than it was, in the middle of BFA it was kind of in an awkward spot. And I've seen people playing it on the beta. I've played it a little bit on the beta, and it is something that I'm probably going to try and play more now that it has, these new spells and new damage like that you can do. I haven't like messed around with covenants and legendaries, so that might change what I'm thinking towards like how I'm gonna play this healer. But for those who like healing, you like playing a priest and you like doing okay Dan, I totally say go ahead and give it a shot. So I'm gonna do a really awkward cut here, so apologies in advance because I don't have an editing software yet. So we're going to do a super awkward cut here, and we're going to cut to some disc gameplay. So the second class I'm going to talk about is disc. Now, I have mained disc since I started healing. So I always feel like I'm a little bit more, I don't know, biased towards disc. And I love doing damage, and so disc always is right up my alley because I'm pretty much doing all of my healing via my damage rotation. And that is so desirable to a lot of people who maybe come from, I don't want to say DPS background, but maybe people who come from, you know, maining like mages or boomkins or, you know, like most range classes. They always kind of gravitate towards disc because the theory is people love doing damage and they love that they can do damage and heal their teammates. It's not like you pick one or the other. You can do one while like benefiting like with the other, if that makes sense. I worded that terribly, but you know what I'm trying to say. So if you love doing damage, you love playing a ranged class, you're interested in the whole like shields, because a lot of your rotation is shields, which I think some people don't think about, or they don't, I don't know, take it into consideration when they start playing disc. Like your rapture, your barriers, your shields, that's a lot of your healing. That's where you're using your atonements, or you're putting your atonements on. It's a little bit less forgiving if you're kind of a healer type and you like to, you know, spam your AoE spells and you like to spam your single target heals. Disc is not like that. Like if you're wanting to spam your spells, you're going to be using penance defensively, you know, maybe on your tank. You're probably going to get into like a habit of Shadowmen spamming, because this spec is just, I think this spec is one of the highest skill caps in my opinion, because you don't have those, you know, heavy spells that you can fall back on that do, you know, giga healing. Like it's not like Holy Priest. You don't have, you know, 12 different spells that can heal. Like a lot of it, like during some, you know, like for instance, maybe burstings happen. You don't have Mass Dispel. Well, you have a problem, right? Because you're going to have to need a target to DPS on to heal your group. And that's not something that is always, you know, like you're not always going to be chain pulling. So if your group's at low HP and you're going from one mob to another, you're going to have to sit there and kind of Shadowmen spam, put shields on them to get them prepared for the next pull, and then kind of hope that they don't just get like one shot if you haven't, you know, spent the time Shadowmending people up. So that's something that takes a little bit of time to adjust to, especially if maybe you're new to disc and it's like your first time playing it. It's a little bit, there's a bit more planning to playing disc than there is like to just pick up another healer. But in saying that, I think disc is also the most rewarding, because when your group is good, you can just sit there, put your shields on your, you know, your team, and then just pump into the boss, and you're just passively healing your team up. And that's a really enjoyable playstyle, in my opinion. Like I love that. Like right now, other than the fact I'm healing this priest, I'm gonna have my atonements out of my group, and I'm just gonna be pumping all my damage into the boss, and that is quite appealing to most people. So I'd always suggest disc if you're like a, you know, maybe you main like a ranged DPS and you're, you know, looking to heal. There's a lot of people who play Shadow Priests, like they off-spec disc. And so I think that's also pretty cool. So yeah, I'm gonna have another awkward jump. Okay, we're gonna go here. We'll go into Mistweaver next. So Mistweaver was the first class that I ever attempted to push on. Unfortunately, we're back in the Siege of Borealis, and this boss is not particularly enjoyable to watch, so apologies on that behalf. But the thing about Mistweaver is it is an incredibly fun melee healer. Some people like the play style of, you know, getting up in there with your tank and your melee DPS and you're, you know, smacking mobs. You know, you're controlling the mobs with, you know, your Ring of Peace, your leg sweep, your paralysis. And Monk, to me, I enjoyed the Way of the Crane play style during BFA. And now you have your Chi-Ji, which is still, it's no Way of the Crane in terms of the short CD. But it is still a really enjoyable playstyle to me. And Monk is also quite a forgiving spec in my eyes. Like if your group is taking a lot of damage, I mentioned this in my last video talking about pugging, Mistweaver has a really easy time of topping your group up. You can keep your renewing mists on people, and then when you need to heal, you know, multiple people at once, you just spam Vivify, and then you're going to be topping people up. If you're really conservative, you can, you know, keep your Essence Font on people, keep your Renewing Mist on people, and then use the Rising Mist build to extend your hots. That's also pretty fun. But the thing with the, you know, Essence Font spam is it's kind of quite mana consuming, so that's not something, you know, you want to get into the habit of. But the damage rotation of Mistweaver is also incredibly fun. It's not particularly difficult either. You know, like you have your basic spells. Touch of Death is super fun. I love being able to eliminate a mob that's at low HP. And it does like really good damage, so that's also pretty fun. And I mean, the good thing about Mistweaver is it gives you a lot of control. You know, you can help your tank kite really easily. To me, it's a kind of simple spec to pick up. And I really enjoy, you know, being able to do good damage, but you're also, you know, you're up there, you're in with the group. The problem is it's kind of never really a fantastic raid spec, but I have been looking at some of the logs for the Castle Nethria, and man, some of these Mistweavers are absolutely pumping in the Warcraft logs that I've seen, so that could be something interesting to look out for. But I just think that Mistweaver is also a really forgiving spec. It's kind of like Holy Priest. Like, you can top your tank very easily. The monk debuff that you bring to the group's also really nice. I mean, most people will say, like, if you're gonna bring a monk, it's probably because of the debuff, which is true. But I mean, monk is just like incredibly forgiving. And to me, it's fun. I like keeping my hots out on people, like, while I'm, you know, doing damage, and being able to extend them is also kind of like another little thing you get to think about while playing your monk. Let's see. Okay, we'll skip here. We're gonna go to Resto Shaman. Unfortunately, I don't have any Holy Paladin gameplay, so that will be a little bit sad. But as everybody knows, I'm mained Resto Shaman in the current pre-patch. And Resto Shaman to me is probably the most fun. I do main Disc Priest, but the thing about Resto Shaman is it's incredibly forgiving, quite simple to pick up. I mean, I picked it up in pre-patch, and I'm pushing, 28s, 29s right now, so it's incredibly simple to pick up. It does really great single target damage, even without, like, all the damage that I'm talking about has nothing to do with, like, Azerite traits. That buffs it for sure, but I'm talking in Shadowlands. It still does incredibly good, like, single target damage, but also having so much AoE, like, your totems are fantastic. Your overall healing throughput is really good. The fact that it's normally always pretty good for raid is another enjoyable thing about Resto Shaman. Again, I love having Lust. I love having a kick. It gives me so much more control in the pug keys that I'm doing, because sometimes you never know when your team is gonna Lust, and you have a purge. Being able to purge a lot of buffs is also nice too. But the main thing that I enjoy about Resto Shaman is I love the damage rotation. Like, I absolutely adore Lava Burst, Lightning Bolt, like keeping my Flame Shock on multiple targets, Chain Lightning. Chain Lightning is a kind of awkward spell, I'll be honest. But for something about Resto Shaman's, damage rotation just feels really rewarding. And I enjoy playing ranged healers more than melee healers. But the spec's also pretty good on mana. I don't have to really worry about healing people because it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And having really powerful healing CDs is also makes the spec super appealing. Having SLT, having Healing Tide, Ascendance is fantastic. If you want to know more about Resto Shaman and why I think it's so good, I'll link another video in the description where I talk about like the rotation of Resto Shaman. But having super powerful healing CDs makes the spec more enjoyable, because if you're over pulling for any reason, or some packs are just incredibly difficult during different affix weeks, Resto Shaman is able to handle all of that. And again, it's kind of like playing an Ellie Shaman in some form. You have less damage abilities, but your damage rotation is somewhat similar, and honestly, I just feel like a full DPS. Even when I'm playing on the beta, I literally just feel like a 4th DPS, like an LE shaman that can heal my group, which I love about the spec. But I'm going to continue talking about Resto Druid and Holy Paladin. Unfortunately, I don't have any gameplay, so that kind of sucks, but we're just going to have to deal with it. So next I'm going to say Resto Druid is also quite a simple healer to pick up, in my opinion. A lot of people like playing Resto Druid because the fact is you can put hots on your group, you can put down your F-low, and you can just do damage. And your group kind of just heals up on their own. They don't have to... Sorry, my cats are playing in the background. It's not very high maintenance. Like, you can put your rejuves out, put Life Bloom on yourself. You've got a great, like, tank DR, so Iron Bark is incredible. Having Soothe is beautiful. Vortex and Typhoon help you give, you know, your group some control over ads. Having a B-res obviously is incredibly desirable. But to me, Resto Druid's another great kind of healing spec, because its damage rotation is such low maintenance. Like, if you're not a huge, you know, min-maxy DPS type, like, you know, you're not like, oh, I want to, you know, go Feral Affinity or go Boomy Affinity and, like, really, you know, watch your DPS. At the very least, you can just put Moonfire and Sunfire on the ads and heal your group, if that's what you want to do. You know, you could put in some Solar Rest, you could put in, you know, if you're Boomy Affinity, you can get some Star Surges in there and some Lunar Strikes. But to me, it's also a very beginner-friendly spec. The damage rotation's super simple. It's pretty much all focused around your hots. Tranquility is another great AoE, like, healing spell for if your group is just taking massive amounts of AoE. Damage. So if you're looking for... I mean, I think Druid is always super powerful, and that's another thing that people like about Druid. It brings so much to the table, and it always seems to be meta in some way, shape, or form. So again, that's something that people like about the spec. But I enjoy the fact that I can put hots on my group, hope that they stand in my F-low, and then I'm mainly in Boomy Affinity so that I have Typhoon to help me get some control over the ads. Or if I'm in Feral Affinity, I can be in there min-maxing my DPS, and, like, I don't have to worry about my team. It's not like you know, obviously you might have to come out of your forms and, you know, get some regrowth going, like, top up with your wild growth. But it is so appealing to just have hots on your group and then just do damage. But it doesn't matter, like, you could play the spec either way. You could be a damage healer and play Resto Druid, or you could be a healer. It really doesn't... It doesn't change. Like, Resto Druid doesn't change the way that you play. You could play, you know, either way. And the thing about Resto Druid is you kind of will just end up doing damage, even if you're a healer, because you're like, oh, I could, you know, put my dots on the target. And then you're just slowly doing damage, and then you'll be like, oh, maybe I could, you know, put a Solar Wrath in here, and you'll kind of learn to weave your damage into your healing spells. And that's the reason that that's how I learned how to heal. I played a Resto Druid. I played Disc for a while, but then I started pushing on a Resto Druid, and I was never really into seeing how much damage I could do. But when you start putting out your Moonfire and your Sunfire, then you kind of go, oh, maybe I could squeeze something in here. So that's also super interesting about playing a Druid. And then last but not least, Holy Paladin. Now, I mained Holy Paladin during Nyalotha Mythic Prog, and I played it in Keys. And the thing about Holy Paladin I faced is that it kind of struggles a little bit if your group is kind of Pepega, because when you don't have wings or you don't have AM, the spec takes a little bit more maintenance to try and, you know, work around healing your group without your biggest CDs, because in my eyes, Holy Paladin is extremely reliant on its CDs, and when you don't have them, the spec takes a little bit more, you know, thinking and effort to try and keep your group alive. So it's a little bit more, I don't know, technical in my eyes than, you know, Mistweaver is. But the thing about Holy Paladin that I love is its damage rotation is so fun. Consecrate, Judgment, Crusader Strike, I think it's called Hammer of Wrath, Avenging Wrath, Shield of the Righteous. It's, like, damage rotation is almost like a Ret Paladin. Like, you're kind of a budget Ret Paladin. And that's so appealing to me when I'm playing a melee. I really love playing paladin because I just feel like I'm just getting my hands dirty while I'm in the group, you know, pumping out the damage. But the thing is that, yeah, it does take a little bit more thought process when it comes to, you know, dealing with, you know, how you're going to keep your group alive. But again, if you love playing Red Paladin or Warrior, Holy Paladin is such a nice alternative if you're, you know, you're healing, or maybe, you know, you're making a Paladin so you can play Pro and you can play Ret and you want to give Holy a shot. I mean, it's definitely fun. I kind of said it was quite weak when I started playing like beta a long time ago, but I think it's definitely changed. They've buffed a lot of stuff since I, you know, made my guides on Holy Paladin. So I definitely think it's a spec that's going to be on the rise. So I think it's definitely worth, you know, watching, even though there are a lot of people who are saying like it's maybe one of the weaker specs at the moment, but I definitely think that's subject to change. It's had so many buffs, you know, in the last few weeks. So that's kind of like the basis of my video. I don't really want to try and tell you what to play. I just thought I'd kind of outline my thoughts. But honestly, all of the healing specs are incredibly fun to play. Like, you're not going to go wrong with picking any of the, you know, 6 that I mentioned. But I would love to know what you guys are thinking, or what you think of the healers. Because to me, they're all fun as hell to play. Yeah, they all have their different strengths and weaknesses, and I didn't really want to make a video where I talk about the strengths and weaknesses, because that's just kind of not the vibe that I'm trying to go for. I just want to like talk about the healers in a positive light. And I mean, if you're just pugging middle range keys, you can get away with playing whatever you want in a key. But yeah, like a lot of people have, you know, come in my Discord, or they've messaged me on Twitch and been like, hey, I kind of want to know what you would suggest for someone who's maybe picking up healing for the first time. So I thought maybe this video would kind of brush over the different, I don't want to say backgrounds, but like the different feels of all the healing specs. But yeah, I'd love to know if you do decide that you're healing, what you're planning on playing, because man, it's gonna be, Shadowlands is looking to be super fun, and I really hope that there is, you know, some kind of meta for all the different classes. I don't want to see everybody locked into Resto Shaman or Resto Druid. So yeah, I hope this video was helpful. I apologize that I don't have any Holy Paladin or Resto Druid gameplay. I was downloading my Resto Druid gameplay because I have some VODs, but then I realized for some reason like it kept frame dropping, so that didn't happen, and unfortunately I've been doing all of my Holy Paladin keys off stream. But yeah, I hope you guys have a lovely rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will see you all in Shadowlands. Bye!